Right, hello. Now, a few weeks ago, we was up in Scotland and we went to this prisoner of war camp, a place called Colty Bragan Camp. I believe it's called Camp 21. Anyway, we turned up at the car park to go and have a look around this. It's like an open air museum. And we turned up to have a look, and this lady's in the car park and she ushers us up to, says, everyone go up to the NAAFI. We're all meeting up there and then we're going to split into groups and have a tour. So we said to the lady, said, well, we're not with you, we just come to the museum. And she says, I don't matter, come and join in. So we went and joined in. And there was these people there, a lot of people, and there was a day out from all these volunteers from the Commonwealth War Graves Commission. Now, it's taken me a long time to do this video because the sound wasn't very good. So I hope you enjoy it. And these War Graves Commission people, they're very nice people. They look after all the Commonwealth war graves, and they've got different sections and that. And like I say, they're very nice people, but a lot of the footage wasn't any good, so I couldn't use it. And what I have used is quite noisy, but I thought I'd just show you anyway. So hope you like it. If you do, like and subscribe. And I'll speak to you soon. Bye for now.
Germans were here from 44 to 48. So we had Waffen SS, we had Submariners, we had German paratroopers, we had others hardcore. So they were the confirmed Nazis who had been in the military from the early 30s. So they would tend to be slightly older than a lot of the other conscripted German soldiers. And the Hitler Youth, of course, would tend to be 18, 19 years old by that time. So the Compound A was hardcore. They were not allowed to fraternise with the others, so it went from that sort of black camp to grey, and then eventually to Compound T, which is where our man shed is, Combi man shed. That was the Wehrmacht German recruitment soldiers who were certainly not Nazis. And we have had folk here. In fact, one of our open days, we had two folk arrive within an hour of each other. One was a lady who said to me, oh, my grandfather's a POW here. I said, oh, what did he do? He was Waffen SS. She whispered it. I said, oh, he was hardcore then. Not whispering it, so everybody was looking at her. So then within an hour, this champion about my age in his 70s said, oh, my father was here as a POW. I said, oh yeah. He was also Waffen SS. So I went out to try and find this lady to introduce them to the but that's the sort of history we have. It's all compartmentally recent history, which, you know, concerning the commemorations that were going on yesterday when we had a commemoration in the village, it's very important that we maintain this history, and that young people maintain that the knowledge of what has happened while we're all here and we're not speaking German, basically.
So I'm looking at your audience here thinking, where are the young people? So when do young people come
We have schools groups, hands-on history.
Right, good.
It's faded away. We did a lot of that at the start, but it's kind of faded a bit, unfortunately. And I've tried to get young people who are doing history at school and university to come. It's not really happening very readily, unfortunately. Good point. The other point which you mentioned is how did prisoners get here? Well, up until 1963, Comrie had a railway station, and one of the main reasons the POW campus here, although it would have been deemed to be quite remote in the 40s, was because the transport system was better in the 40s than we have now. Comrie had a railway station, and that's how they got here. They came up from the south, east of England, largely the Channel ports, and they were up to Perth and then out to Comrie. And the trains were all blacked out, so they didn't see where they had left and where they were coming to. My mother, who was from Crieff originally, she remembers the trains coming through Crieff railway station with all blacked out. But that's basically why the campus here. And then they were marched up the village, singing their songs very defiantly, or they were sometimes taken up in these Bedford 3-ton trucks. Okay, next door there. So all the camps in the nation, of which there were 79 in Scotland, nearly 600 in the whole of the UK, this was Camp 21. And there's a novel that's been written about Camp 21 with some of it's fact, some of it's fiction. But it's quite a good read. Some of you may have read it. The smaller huts here were really ablution blocks. Some were for German officers. Some were kitchens. So each compound had its own ablution blocks, kitchens, separately fenced off. They got, there's your food, you deal with it. So they didn't queue up in a canteen for beans on toast. They prepared the food as a compound. So they would designate people, give them something to do, kept them occupied. So it wasn't like a canteen food system where they all queue up and they get fed by somebody who's in authority at the camp. The guards were Polish and British, and the avenue that most of you walked up there to the jail block this morning, on your left as you walked up, that was the guards' accommodation. Polish and British. Half of those huts are now self-catering, all the units, made up as four-star self-catering, becoming quite popular. Right, come on, folks. Of a rifle range, and that's so. This has nothing to do with POW. This was all huts here. This is Compound B. That was Compound A. So A and B are largely gone. It's mainly Compound C and B intact, kind of intact. But this was absolutely pristine when the MOD looked after it, because they had all the funds to do it. All these huts were beautifully painted all the time. The grass was cut, and we just had enough funds to do that kind of thing. So this is the north end of the camp. The Wehrmacht, who were in Compound D, right at the far end, the east end, they were out every day working in forestry and farming, transported in the 3-ton Bedfords as far away as Matterdy, which is 2/3 of the way to Perth. Highly regarded as a workforce, and in fact, there was still some of Compound D here in 1948 because we needed the labour. They did not get to fraternise, or the Compound A didn't fraternise with Compound D, because there was trouble when this murder happened, and that was an error. And the perpetrators, the 8 who they thought had committed this crime, they were transported back down to London for some reason or other. I don't know why they didn't try them in Perth or Stirling or Edinburgh, Glasgow. They took them back to London, and of course they would know they were in hiding to nothing. They didn't escape, but there would have been a huge amount of supervision on the train. Anyway, to cut a long story short, Albert Pierpoint, the infamous hangman, he hanged 5 of them. And the others, I think, were 1 or 2. One's not guilty, I think. One was maybe too young, we're not quite sure. But out of the 8 they thought were committed this crime, which it was that 8, 5 of them were hanged in London. Could have done the same hanging in Glasgow. Yeah, there wouldn't be many, but there were some POWs here until 1948, as I said. So from 44 to 48, there would never have been many of the prisoners here for more than a few months at a time. It wasn't as if they came here and they stayed for the duration. For some reason or other, they were almost continually in transit. Few weeks, few months off somewhere else. Some went to the States, some went to Canada, some went to Kenya, and they came from these places to here. So I don't know why that was the case, but there was probably none of the prisoners were here for the duration from 44 to 48. It was maybe a deliberate ploy but it must have cost a fortune to keep moving these people around. Maybe disorientate them. And water. The facilities were good enough, but pretty basic. Throughout the nation, and they did get the same food as the guards. Local businesses benefited. There were several little grocery shops in Comrie, far more than there is now. So there would be a benefit to the local community in the food had to be purchased. And also there was civilian labour used at the camp as well, and continued to be used when the MOD took over in 1948. These towers here, these brick towers, they're nothing to do with the POW period. They were built when the MOD took over, so they would have been built sometime in the 50s, because when British military came here, they insisted on washing a bit more often than the Germans were allowed to wash, if you like. So they had to increase the water pressure, and that's what these towers are for. They're water towers. During the POW period, there wasn't a lot of washing, and certainly not in warm water took place. There were showers, of course, and toilet facilities, but not remarkably good. Maybe adequate for the time, perhaps, but not the best. All right.
Did the camp guards and everybody, the administrators, stay on site?
Sorry?
Did the camp guards stay on site?
Yes. The avenue that you all walked, I think most of you walked up from where I think most of you are parked near the entrance. There's that avenue that you all walked up on your left hand side where there was 10 huts,
Right.
smaller huts. That was the guards' accommodation.
Right. So they're just in this huts like prisoners?
Yes. A bit more comfortable, I say, quite a bit more comfortable. Because in here there was 80 to 90 POWs
Yeah.
in each of these. And some of the smaller huts, there would have been maybe some army German NCOs stroke officers in some of the smaller huts. But yeah. That's a charity. See all the bikes? Yeah. Run by a local chap. It's Bikes for Africa. He collects thousands and thousands of bikes which are eventually containerized and sent out to Africa. It's called Bikes for Africa. Amazing what it is. So this here, what they call a nuclear bunker, built in the 80s during the period of the Cold War when there was all that paranoia. So this was built by Kier Construction, Scottish company. It cost millions. There was accommodation in there for 250 people. Most of it's underground. There's a BBC broadcasting station, hence the comms tower. Special filtration system for radiation. They even put Fuller's Earth on the outside. The Fuller's Earth has the capacity to absorb radiation. They went to a huge extent, and it was only a year before 250 people. So who do you select? When the rest are growing 3 legs and 2 heads, and they're in there, 6 months water, 6 months food. It was never used in Tiger, of course. It was kept operational for 1 year, and then it was mothballed. But it cost several million. It's now privately owned. They purchased it for about 140,000, and it's full of fantastic equipment. No, they're using it for secure data storage. Yeah. So, yeah. You will. There's a hut we have open further around, folks. I don't want to say too much more, maybe a few anecdotes, but because there's so much to read in the museum, and you'll get a wee feel for the atmosphere of one of these huts. 46, you'll get just over here. But please ask any questions.
Medical facilities?
Yes, and a good question here, folks. Medical facilities. Initially, while the camp was slowly getting more and more occupation, initially it was a local GP, but he soon got swamped and couldn't go any more than just the local community. So then, as the place got busier, especially with the German prisoners, they eventually got some of their own medics. They arrived as prisoners, nurses and things. So there was a dispensary, a little kind of hospital dispensary within the camp. Anything serious would go to Perth Royal Infirmary, as it is now. But initially, when there were small numbers, it was a local GP.
For any prisoners that died on site, were they buried locally or were they taken somewhere else?
No, they were taken somewhere else now. There's a graveyard down in England somewhere they were taken to. There are some graves in Perth Cemetery, and there, as you know, there's war graves there as well, and there's Polish graves there, as you know. But there's some there would have been some deaths here, but not very many, because there were young, healthy males, all males, no females here. So generally speaking, the health was okay. They had enough food. There was nobody was starving. It was about the same food as the guards. It would have been very basic. The ones who were out working every day on farms, they got fed by the farm. So they actually, there's records of them bringing back food for some of their mates here, because they were getting well fed. And they were highly regarded as a workforce. And that's one of the reasons that there were still some here in 1948. We needed them.
You mentioned 4,000 maximum. How many schools came through altogether?
Oh, good question. Don't know. That'll be recorded, but I don't know. It would have been up to 4,000 here, but it wouldn't have remained at 4,000 for very long a time, I don't think, because there were so many interrupted. The trains would have been busy with German people just going to and from.
It's maybe a mention in the Camp 21 book. I feel like there's a mention.
Could be, yes. Some of it's fact, some of it's fiction in that book, of course. It was artistic license, which is fair enough.
The chap that was murdered, was he murdered?
No, I've forgotten what happened to Rusturk. Don't think he's in Perth, though. I think there's a cemetery down in England somewhere. Yeah,
Cannock Chase.
That's the one.
Well,
That's the one.
right,
Yes,
when they
yes.
were, yeah.
It's on the story.
That's where most of them are.
Yeah.
I'm originally from Hoyk, Stubbs Camp. They were all disinterred and reinterred
Yes,
from the
Cannock.
First World War in Cannock Chase.
Cannock Chase, that's right. I think it mentions that on one of the storyboards.
Same at Nacarlo on the Isle of Man. They were all taken, because that was a huge camp.
Yes,
You know.
yeah.
They were all taken to Cannock Chase as well.
I mean, you think of the logistics at the time, it's incredible, really, what was going on. Anyway, let's go and get into it.
So we go World War I hunting.
Ex-POWs, both Italian and German, who stayed in Scotland. Well, yes. And in fact, when my wife and I came with our two young children in 1982, there were still two ex-POWs here who married locally, had families, and I got to know one of them. They both had very strong German accents, and Carl was one of them. They both worked on local estates, forestry, and I said, Carl, why didn't you go back to Germany when you were repatriated? He said, well, he had come from Leipzig, which became part of the German Democratic Republic, and he couldn't trace any of his family. So he got advice, don't go back. You're likely to be imprisoned by the Soviet authorities or maybe even executed. So he never went back to Germany. Neither did the other children. They've died. But yes, and there's a lot of Germans stayed within the UK, and the Italians likewise. probably more Italians than Germans. But Steinmeier, who you'll read about in there, and I'll tell you the wee quick story then you can read more about. Heinrich Steinmeier came here as Hitler Youth, 19-year-old. He was a confirmed Nazi because he knew nothing else since when he was about 10 or 11, being part of Hitler Youth. And he came here, to cut a long story short, he was able to become befriended by some local people whom we knew, and they've since died. But Heinrich changed his ideology such that he stayed in Scotland when he was released until 1970. He then went back to Germany, but he kept going back to Comrie for his holidays to see his friends. And when he died, he had married, but there was no children. And I think the marriage broke up. But when he died, just a few years ago in his early 90s, he left his estate to the elderly of Comrie, £386,000. And I was on the committee. We've only got about 10,000 left, but most of it's been spent wisely. And well, we made some mistakes in that the groups who made applications to us as a committee, it didn't work. But there wasn't many failures. We lost a few, not much, but most of it I think Steinmeier would have been very happy with. So good on Heinrich.
Can I just share a little story as well?
Yes.
So I used to work for the National Museum of Scotland.
Yep.
And we ran the Museum of Rural Life in East Kilbride, Kittickside. I don't know if anybody's familiar with it. And they had a prisoner of war there called Heinrich.
Yeah.
He was captured just 2 weeks into his service. He was 17. And he was shipped over to America and then eventually ended up in Scotland. And he said when he landed at Kittickside, it was like being in heaven. His brother had already been killed.
Gosh.
He was working on the farm, living in the bothy. And then when we opened Kittickside in the year 2001, we invited him back, and he came back with his daughter, and he was just so grateful to be there. He just had such good memories. The families had kept in touch all those years.
Yeah, that's good.
I think
Well,
yeah.
that's
We need
very
more of those
similar
stories,
to
don't we?
Steinmeier,
Yeah.
Because they were well looked after here, and the Red Cross reports are good. Food in the early days was short. It got better, but it was short for everybody. You know, the infrastructure was not working for a while, and the food wasn't getting transported around the country as good as it should be, but that all improved. But it wasn't any worse for the prisoners than it was for the guards. That's the guards' accommodation, not this up here, but the maintained ones with the nice shiny roofs, that was the guards' accommodation. Right, well, right. Enter the inner sanctum. Right, come on in, folks. Work in progress. We don't make a charge, we just ask people to make a donation when they come in here. And there's lots of storyboards down on the left-hand side. There's no entrance on the right-hand side, but basically this was the jail block within the POW camp. So for particularly naughty prisoners, stealing, throwing stones at the guards, insubordination, that kind of thing. If they were probably persistent offenders, then they could be locked up in here, solitary confinement, for a week, 2 weeks, 3 or 4, whatever, until they decide they're going to behave themselves. But as I'd say to some people, that a week in solitary here might be quite pleasant compared to several weeks in one of these long huts with 80 or 90 other fellow sweaty, farting Germans, you know. with a bucket at either end, because they were locked in the hut at night, and they're allowed into the compound during the day and then allowed in to play football at other times. But it might be quite nice to have a week's holiday in solitary. Right, come on through here. And befriended, there's an old friend of ours who's now dead. He was a PO, petty officer in the Royal Navy, so they became mates. Anyway, you can see where the dividing walls have been knocked down, folks. So there was 5 cells on this side of the corridor and 5 on the other. When the MOD took over, they knocked most of these dividing walls down because they needed an armoury for training British military, for storing rifles, munitions, etc. So that's why they knocked down these walls. But I want to tell you this story because it doesn't quite complete it here. There was a German prisoner called Peter Fruman who spoke English. He worked in the admin office of the camp, trusted prisoner. And he realised he had a talent for drawing, and they got him some art materials. Anyway, he drew 66 caricatures depicting life on the camp. When he was repatriated, he went up to the camp commandant, this guy here, Captain Makins, who lived on site, obviously, and he said, "These are for you." He gave him the 66 drawings, which is a really nice thing to do, because he could have taken them home, he could have binned them, he could have burnt them. So Fruman gave them to the captain. About 8 years ago, we got a call from this then lady in her 80s, who was this Captain Megan's daughter. They'd been clearing out the family home in Hampshire and found the originals. We didn't even know they existed. Got in touch with the trust and said, "We found something here." This lady realised her father had been here, Camp Contact, and said, "We would like to return these to camp." So they did that. After 65, 70 years, they came back here. And it's a fantastic story, isn't it? And it depicted life in the camp and answered some of our queries. The originals are in storage in Perth Museum at the moment, because we don't have a safe place. But they're priceless in a way. It's amazing, and it's just such a positive story. So there's that positive thing, there's the Steinmeier positive thing, there's the negative incident with Foster. So please go and just help yourselves read the stories. There's loads of storyboards on the other side. And then when you finish, if you make your way back out again into what I was going to take into Hut 46, there's simulated bunk beds in there, give you an idea how crammed they had to be to accommodate 80 to 90 POWs in there. And there's some MOD stuff as well, some MOD beds and uniforms and things. But the far end is the bunk beds, and that's a simulation of. So just help yourselves in there, have a wee look, and then make your way back to the Naffy hut and get a cup of tea.
Brilliant. Well, thank you very much.
I hope that was okay.
Brilliant.
Right, take your time, I'll give you a Yes, that's right. Carl died before her. Carl maybe died 2-3 years ago.
Yeah.
So she lived in Translate for
Sleaford Girls and Shelter.
Yeah, well, Carl and her husband were good friends of ours. And in fact, they're very friendly. David, the son, David's friend.
Okay, yeah.
Lives up in Mayo Belgium.
Yeah.
But did you, Carl?
I knew him more after she died because I do the IT at church.
Oh, yes.
So when there's a funeral,
Yes.
you know, the minister meets with the family, says, "Do you want any photographs or any
Yes.
music?" And they send it all to me,
Okay.
and I put it all together in a slideshow. So
No, Carl was involved with the church, I knew that.
yeah, so I got all the photographs sent to me from David, I think. You know, I put them all together.
She was a lovely lady, Carl.
Yes.
Yeah, but latterly she was fairly pretty for. Right, you'll be asked questions and all of this later, folks. Right, take your time and then go to Hut 46, have a wee look, and then come down and have a cup of tea. Alrighty? Thanks for coming.
Thank you.
Yeah, cheers. Safe home.
Thank you.
Okay.
Hi, so I'm Elaine Edwards. I'm the Public Engagement Coordinator for the East and North of Scotland, which covers the east side of Scotland from the borders right up to the top of Scotland and all the islands, so quite a big area. So I am coordinating volunteers who go out and do talks and tours for the Commonwealth War Graves Commission all over Scotland. I'm also involved in things like arranging the D-Day commemoration up at the National War Museum. Sorry, the National War Memorial, which was held last week. And I liaise with schools. We do cross-generational work from youngsters to older people, promoting the work of the Commonwealth War Graves. If you want to talk, please contact us.
Thank you very much.